Okay.
Good morning. This is Janice Perkins with Capacity, and today I'm joined by Derrick Nielsen, the CEO of High Touch Technologies. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Janice?
I'm good on this rainy morning. I'm so
Indeed.
excited to finally get to pin you down. You've been a busy man the last couple months.
We've all been operating in a brave new world, right? It's been different and busy.
In a brave new world. I want you to kick off this morning by talking to me about adaptation. Because as a technology company, not only did you have to personally adapt, but you have helped many clients through adaptation. How they're delivering services, how they're communicating with clients, with each other. Talk to me about some of those things and see if there's some tips that people can pick up on for their own organizations.
That's great, Janice. I may ramble a little bit, because we could go a lot of different directions with
Right.
this. Talking to someone from a tech company, the easy, obvious answers relate to technology and how are we using it to adapt. And I think in many ways, this isn't introducing brand new things, but it's accelerating people's adoption and comfort with things that were emerging, things that felt a little more
Right.
leading edge.
Right.
Cloud solutions, VoIP solutions for telephony, more of a mobile and remote approach to infrastructure for network and to support employees. I mean, all those things were already in play. It's just people weren't as far down that path as these events kind of pushed them. So we saw a big surge, in VPN licenses as people wanted to move employees home remotely. Obviously, there was the crush on demand for laptops and webcams and all the things to enable. A lot of people had Teams, but had never really used it. And
Right.
probably, I'll be honest, I had used Teams in my past and we had it, but we didn't make very good use of it. And it felt kind of unnecessary. Well, all of a sudden in the collaborative remote environment, Teams can be a real lifesaver. And so you're forced to use it differently, and then you see the advantages, and it becomes more and more natural. I think another emerging thing that's going to only come to the fore more quickly now is discussions around security. Traditional approaches to securing your environment, where most employees came in, if you'll bear with me with an analogy, they came into the castle frequently, right? And the castle was protected by high walls. We all have perimeter defenses on our network. And we patrolled it with traditional antivirus and that kind of stuff, firewalls and antivirus and patching and update. Well, now that people are going outside of the castle and they're not coming into the castle as frequently, security has to change. It's a very different environment protecting all those endpoints when the endpoints are remote and mobile. And many times they're people's personal devices. And so there's a whole, and we can talk more about that if you like, but there's a whole shift, I think, that will be going on to better secure that mobile remote workforce. And that's probably the next thing that many business owners are going to have to start to educate themselves on and learn about. But your question about agility, I've been, and you and I share a geeky interest and fascination in people operations, people development, culture, those issues. I've been fascinated by how these times and this change has affected how we lead people, how we promote and develop our culture. I think at times like this, things like your core values don't change, don't adapt, but you have to reimagine what they mean in the new environment. In High Touch, we had rolled out some core values prior to all this.
Right.
That we were talking about and preaching and engaging on. Those are still true, but how we have to live them, how we apply them are completely different. I've said to a number of people throughout this, we have to start thinking less about rules and policies and much more about principles. Because when the
Mm-hmm.
world changes,
Right.
you can figure out how to apply a principle in a brand new setting. Many times rules and policies are incoherent in a new situation that you never imagined. So it's definitely been an interesting, all this came at the very end of my first year at High Touch and my first year
Happy
as a
anniversary.
CEO. And I keep harassing my predecessor and telling him, where was the pandemic playbook, that was going to tell me exactly
Right.
how to do
Didn't
all
you
this.
have the process and procedure book already built
Right,
for me? Right.
right. But no, I mean, talking to CEOs who's been in the job for 20 years, they've never seen anything like this.
Right.
We're figuring it out together.
I love what you were talking about with the core values shifting to principles, and it's something that I've been discussing with a couple different people. That two things. One is the innate sense of how you adapt and how you have your sense of calm and how you have those developed good habits for trauma. They're created way before trauma comes across your desk.
Yes.
So it's a character revealing exercise, and
Yeah.
for all of us peeking behind the curtain in something like this, it showed us places in our principles and character that were undeveloped. That's the
Yeah.
nice way to say it.
Yes. Sure.
And I've just been repeating over and over again that when you bump up against that uncomfortable in this, whether it's making a tough decision or having that slight freak out moment that all of us have had a few of those, that you have to sit in it long enough to know, what is that bumping up against? Is that fear? Am I lacking courage? Am I missing a skill, or am I needing knowledge? What is it that's missing in that moment that makes me feel weak, so to speak? Am I needing
Right.
vulnerability? Am I needing more compassion? It's really examining the principles of character that you just mentioned that can help us develop as people through this. It's not just what you just said. Traditional leadership would say through any kind of crisis, right? Adaptation and rules and procedures and core values and culture can carry you. But this is something that's much deeper than that. This goes economic, this goes sociological, psychological. There's so many emotional, so many different levels to this that we've never experienced. And because of that, it's really more, how can I plow the ground of my own heart through this and come out a better person?
Absolutely. And I think if you ever had core values that were kind of airy fairy and fuzzy and didn't really mean anything,
Right.
you found out now, right? And
Right.
and you would find out truly what are those core values that we actually lean upon, that
Mm-hmm.
we need. I also think it's interesting as a leader, when people all go into the same building and you see each other and you have meetings and you're all around each other, there's a false veneer of control
Mm,
that
mm,
implies. And I think part of what freaks people out when you go truly remote like this, you lose that, right? I don't, that physical proximity isn't around.
mm-hmm.
So if it allowed you to believe there was a sense of control where there probably really wasn't, that's gone now. And so you really find out, are they core values that HR talked about, or are they truly core values that employees have internalized and embraced and believe in? Because now you're dependent upon everybody being able to articulate those as principles, apply them day to day, apply them in their client interactions when there's not a supervisor behind
Mm-hmm.
them, but
Mm-hmm.
act on them every morning when they get up with their coffee in their basement or their kitchen table or their gaming lair, wherever they're remote working from. Those core values had better have been implanted and of real value to them, because they have to act on it every day.
I love the way you describe that as a veneer, because there are other things surrounding that that are affected by proximity, and that involves the culture that you're talking about and the culture that the organization thinks that it is implanted. It's not just geographical. What was the first phrase that you used when you were talking about the veneer? But it's really also, are we on the same team if we're not wearing the same jersey anymore? Right?
Right.
Because we don't have to be in that building. did we really have cohesion on the team, or was it proximity? There are other layers to that veneer that impact culture in are we okay communicating this way versus next to each other? And
you raised a really interesting question, Janice. It's something I've been thinking about and talking about with some employees recently. I mean, we've had a lot of questions about, should we use this as a moment in time where we stay more remote? Should our new operating model be less dependent upon going into an office? Many more employees, including employees who didn't think they would ever say this, say, I actually like this. Can I choose to work more remotely? And so we've been having a lot of discussion around, I think teams have found they've stayed very gelled in their interactions.
Good.
And we do make really good use of Microsoft Teams. And part of that is because we're a big Microsoft partner, and we help our clients deploy Teams. And in this case, the cobbler's kids really do have shoes. We have it, we use it very robustly. But part of the discussion has been, and part of the questions I've asked to the team, because I believe we will end up in a hybrid environment. I believe we will do much more remote work than we did before, but it will be not on a permanent basis. It'll be flexed. It'll be certain parts of the day or the week or the month, depending on the work and the team. But I don't think we'll disband or dramatically shrink down our physical space or offices, because what I've asked the teams are, High Touch, I was blessed with inheriting a strong company. We've been around 36 years. There's a lot of employees that have worked together a long time and have a lot of trust and have robust teams. So I've asked them, okay, you've done great operating remotely. Would you be as comfortable operating remotely had you not had that history of trust and interaction in other ways? So if you only ever came together as a remote team, would it feel the same today? And I don't know that we know the answer. It's just one of those things we're talking about, trying to figure out how we define that new normal, that hybrid approach that I think we will use in the future.
Now, I love that you said it that way, as a hybrid. And I've heard lots of other conversations from other organizations that are similar. Some are just geographically dependent because of the way they serve, whether that's retail or, their clients come pick things up. It just depends on the level. Some of the nonprofits, especially service model wise, they don't have the ability to flex very far. But I do think that there are organizations that have seen that limitations, there's not a fence anymore.
Right.
So the idea that I have to own real estate or have to be in a building, and maybe is part of the conversation that's being tossed around in lots of places. What does that hybrid model look like moving forward? And where could I better invest that money if it's not in brick and mortar? And I do think there's going to be a lot more shifting, like you're talking about. Yeah. It's definitely happening.
Well, and to play off the name of these series of interviews that you do, which is great. If you want to look on the bright side, this whole crisis has forced people to figure out just how far that model can go remote, right? And I think a lot of people have learned a lot more can be done remotely, in part or in whole, than they would have ever thought. And that's good. I mean, it's much more business model agility that I think people that are strategic about it can make good use of going forward.
Well, and you and I can laugh at this because we're consultants, and that's been your experience previously as well.
Yeah.
That when you're a consultant, you're really a change agent to an organization, and a lot of people resist change. So when you have a catalyst like this, all of a sudden, change isn't the part of the conversation that holds people back. It's just really choice, and the choices were limited, so people had to be mobile, and they had to adapt. And so, that resistance came way down because it was survivability. And so, there are a lot of situations that have made me smile when it comes to organizations. I'm a deep end kind of the pool girl, right? Like, just jump in, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just see what happens. We can always come back. It's part of, there's only so much time you can allocate sometimes to adaptation and change when it comes to organizational shifts. But
Right.
it's been funny to see, people who they tend to be resistant and do things very, very slow have had to go straight in the deep end. And like you said, it's organizational adaptation at its best because it reduced restrictions. There was nothing left. And so all of a sudden organizations look differently and they would have never gotten there before.
Right. Well, and I mean, we all have watched Simon Sinek's, TED Talk on Start with Why, or we've all heard about that principle that change happens when you can explain the why. And I think that's absolutely true. Without explaining the why, you can't lead change. Well, something like this happens, the why becomes very apparent to everybody very quickly. It doesn't depend on a leader's skill to articulate it. It is surrounding us all literally every day in every aspect of our life. So I mean, if you can't get across the urgency for change now, you're probably in the wrong role, and you described leading change as something that, and I believe, by the way, I mean, it's a pet peeve and it's semantics and I geek out about that stuff too, but it's not change management. I really do believe you lead change, you don't manage change. And yes, as consultants, that's one thing that we got a whole lot of practice in, because people don't pay you to do what I've always done, right? By the very nature of engagement, I'm only going to spend hard-earned money if I need help doing something different.
Right.
But in reality, that's what all leaders do, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you don't need leaders to perpetuate status quo. Inertia does that for you, right? All leadership in some level is about, in my belief, about change leadership and behavior management. I mean, it's always about trying to figure out what needs to evolve and in what direction, and then supporting and engineering that change through helping support people change their behavior.
That's right. And because you're such a very uplifting, positive person, I want you to really speak to some of that behavior modification in how you have been a leader through this time period where there has been a lot of fear. So talk to me about how you have embedded hope, how you have embedded positivity, how you have kept people looking forward on the bright side through this.
It's an interesting question. Maybe I haven't had time to sit and ponder and articulate maybe the way that it hasn't felt like it's been to a master plan. I'll tell you that. I think,
I don't think any of us have had master plans.
No. So I don't know that I had a vision of change that I went and implemented. I'm going to go back to those principles. I mean, we talked as an executive team up front and said, health of our employees and health of our customers, and then in turn, the family of our employees and our customers have to be our prime concern. I mean, we're all scared to death about that. We all have elderly parents we interact with, or compromised immune system somewhere in our family. And I mean, we're all scared and uncertain. It is both unsettled and unsettling times. So I think the core principles that we've just tried to follow have been, think about employee health first. Ensure people feel like their safety is a top of mind principle that we will make other decisions by, and explain decisions in terms of it. So we actually went out remote probably sooner than we needed to. And we certainly had some employees who were kind of dragging their feet, like it's more convenient for me to come into the office. I've got a better setup here. I've got my 3 monitors, and we told them, take your monitors home. For goodness sakes, we're a tech company. If you can't take your monitors home and install them, we probably have a bigger problem. Just take them home. Take what you need to be productive home and go home. Safety is first, and we quickly didn't want to run the risk either of a very, valued employee being exposed and coming into the office and exposing 3 or 4 of their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I have a hardware engineer, a software developer, an accountant, and myself sick, that's one thing. That's hard, but we can manage as a business and still serve our clients. If I have 4 engineers that
Right.
all are on our help desk out at the same time, we can't support our customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, we went out very early, and thank goodness we did too, because we were already out and remote about the time that our customers realized they needed to go remote. So we were already kind of up and functioning and knew how everything worked. Things like help desk that traditionally rely
Right.
upon being next to each other, but we got it up and going virtually. And I think since then, one of the key principles has just been transparency. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I have gone into everything and said I'm going to put a positive spin on it, as much as I've said I'm just going to be very transparent. I mean, I have the same fears my colleagues and employees have. I talk about the same things around the dinner table as we're shut in together. We just decided we'd have a company-wide conversation about those things. We would try to be very transparent in
Mm-hmm.
our thinking and our decision making.
Mm-hmm.
We were very proactive to go out early, and I've announced to the company we're going to be very proactive in going back in late. I see no reason for us to rush back in. It just increases the risk of exposure for employees, and through them, our customers.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to stay on a remote footing as long as we can. Our core values apply. You know, our focus on customers, being steady under pressure, you know, all the things that we talk about all the time. You know, we talk about humbly confident being one of the core values. And I keep telling to people, I am humbly confident about where we're at because of how everyone is rising to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my wife, I used to coach all of our kids playing sports when they were little, and my wife used to always tell me, you're a really good supportive coach, but you don't expect enough of the kids sometimes. She said, you don't, if you would set the bar higher and expect them to perform higher and more independently and on their own, they'd grasp these skills quicker and perform at a higher level quicker, and would be more internally satisfied themselves doing it and gain more confidence. And that's always stuck with me as something I think I need to apply in my business life too.
Mm-hmm.
That if we expect employees to figure out how to apply our core values remotely, they will. If we expect them to stay engaged, if we don't assume that we have to micromanage them to watch when they log in and when we log off. If we set expectations of what our clients need from us,
Right.
by and large, employees rise to meet that challenge. And
Absolutely.
frankly, anyone who might not probably weren't rising to meet the challenge in the office either. And that's
right.
just part of management responsibility to figure out
Mm-hmm.
where those individuals are and find out, is it a lack of an understanding of what to do or how to do it or want to do it. And if it's a what to do or how to do, it's a management issue you can fix. And if it's a want to do it, then it's not a good fit for them or for us.
That's exactly right. And I love how you describe that as that vulnerability and that transparency. It's very difficult. Well, you said transparency, but I know that comes with vulnerability, because transparency is very difficult as a leader without vulnerability. And because of that, and I know you well enough to know, and a lot of the people on your team, it's authentic. People can try to fake transparency and honesty, and I have empathy for this situation, but without the authenticity behind it, it doesn't build confidence in your team. And so I know that those things came together when you described your transparency, and that is enabling people to be confident that they can be real, they can still bring their talents to the table, and that you're protecting them. Those things are confidence builders. And it's exactly what we need as people belonging to a group or doing interactions with clients and or vendors, is to be confident that the humanness of me matters more than anything else.
Yeah.
And that belief in the human spirit too, I want you to keep talking about that, because I've had lots of what I've called horror stories from employees and colleagues who have talked about bad leadership in this time period. And a lot of that is not believing in the beauty of the human spirit. I'm a skeptic, so I'll raise my hand and say I am a skeptical person. But when it comes down to the core value of humanness and interaction, I believe in the goodness of people first. And if that burns me, so be it.
Yeah.
And I want you to speak to that, because that is really important in this trust going on in remote working.
Well, and to your earlier point, I'll just say, being vulnerable and authentic in this time frame, I don't know how else to be. I mean, I can't fake it. Unless any of us were around in 1918 and going through the Spanish flu, none of us have any direct experience that's relevant to this, right? So we're all making it up. And so, why act like, I mean, it's clear none of us have direct experience in this, and therefore be open and honest about that. And I guess my approach has been to just try to be honest in the thinking that lies behind what we say we're going to do, so that people can challenge the thinking if there's a flaw in it, right? We're all learning stuff about the virus, stuff about the aid packages. I mean, everything is changing around us so quickly. No one knows it all, nor can someone expect to. So I think if you have an open conversation with your executive team, your leadership team, your managers, your employees, about here's what we think we know, here's the principles we hold dear, therefore we're going to do this until we learn that the facts have changed or we have a better idea, and to try to enable people to contribute to that ongoing conversation, and we somewhat figure it out together. I think employees accept you not knowing everything, but being transparent in how you're trying to figure it out. People embrace that. And in terms of the human spirit, that seems very grandiose. I feel hard pressed to say. I just, we all learn things in times like this, right? We learn things about ourselves. We learn things about our families. We learn things that are important to us personally and professionally. I'm humbled by the number of employees who have said, I am so grateful for the job I have. I am so grateful that I do what I do. I was always grateful before because I like it. I like technology, or I like being around technology. But now it's even more important. I mean, I can see how needed what I know is, and I feel like I can really add value to clients, and I can help them when they need it most. And then also, people being grateful that we're in a business where it is still needed, and where we can do our jobs in the way that it's needed, and that they feel like they do have some security in their job, as much as any of us can have security in times like this. I don't know. I'm a big believer that we all get up and want to do something that's of value.
That's right.
Purpose. And we want to do something of value. We want to do it with people with whom we trust, and around whom we feel like we are our best selves. They help make us better. We all want to belong to a tribe that's doing something important. And so I think a lot of culture building could be reduced down to that, right? I mean, figure out how to support the give a darn factor in employees, and then create an environment where they can give a darn around people that they can trust, around a mission that seems inspiring, worth getting up for,
Hmm.
worth spending time away from your family, whether it's on a different floor in the house or in a building somewhere else. Um, I think that's what we're all looking for. And great organizations just figure out their own unique way to operationalize that in their business model.
You know, we're going to capture that and package it and put it out on Amazon. The way you said that was really eloquent and beautiful, by the way. It will be your new ebook.
There
So,
you go.
so I want you to also tell me about your personal on the bright side. So for Derrick and your family, so you had college kids, right? That came back home?
So we have our oldest daughter is actually doing an online master's through
Okay.
University of Florida, but she lives in Lawrence. She's still in Lawrence and doing that. She actually is working while she goes to school, and she works in a plasma donation
Mm.
company, and so she's been an essential worker and going in and out of the office, which is nerve-wracking for us, obviously. Um, then our second oldest is graduating from Wichita State this year, and so she's finishing up school but is at home. And then we have two identical twin boys that are seniors in high school this year and are graduating. So there are five
You
of us
have
here.
you have three on the cusp of transition out
Yeah.
of educational benchmarks. Oh, that's got
Well,
to be.
and it's hilarious because we actually, my wife and I keep talking about, 4 months from now, we could be empty nesters, or there could be still five of us running around here. Everything's up in the air. Um, Madison is going back to school and is going to do her master's online as well, and hasn't decided is she going to save money and stay at home or move out. And then our boys are planning to go to KU, but if you can tell me for sure if they're going to be on campus or not, that would be helpful. So everybody's in transition. I my personal bright spot. I can't speak for my wife or kids. They may interpret these events differently, but as you know, because we know each other, we've talked, I was working down in Oklahoma prior to taking a job at High Touch. I was commuting down during the week. So a year ago, coming back to Wichita to be at home all the time, except when I was traveling to a High Touch office or an event, but actually being able to live at home, was a huge blessing. And as you know, right before I started the job at High Touch, we had a house fire. And
Mhm.
so we lived in a rental all of this last year until day before Thanksgiving. And we got to move back into our restored house. And the number of times my wife and I have said, oh, thank God we got back into the house. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
just imagining if we would have been in the rental space we were in, all of us. My wife has said she would have run through the streets licking things and screaming if we were still stuck in the rental. I hope she was exaggerating. But it's been wonderful to be at home and comfortable when you're
Mhm.
kind of locked in for a long period of time. But probably on a more serious note, that time at home has obviously been great. I don't know what it would have been like if I was still theoretically working in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
It would have been a real burden. That was hard enough as it was. And in these circumstances, I don't know what I would have done. And on the work front, through all the uncertainty and change, I am so proud and grateful to see
Mhm.
how employees have responded. And so many things that we were working on prior to any of this, people have just picked up the mantle and kept it going, if not accelerated it through this. And that's just so gratifying to see, you know. Um, so it's good.
Gratefulness has expanded, I believe, in a
Yeah.
lot of us. Not that I think ever, in knowing you, that you've ever been an ungrateful person who was too busy to smell the roses. But I think for all of us, that place in our character and heart has expanded.
Yeah.
in a way that we're grateful for even the small things, not just the large ones. And we're appreciative of them in a way that we weren't before. It's definitely given itself more space.
Yeah.
And that's a good habit to take forward.
It's interesting. We part of the core values, I mentioned that we kind of restated our core values and kind of re-rolled out an emphasis on what they mean. And one of the core values we talk about is thinking generously.
Mm.
And it's been interesting because the application of that principle that I hadn't thought that much about prior to this COVID thing was we also need to think generously about ourselves at times.
Mm-hmm.
You read all the best practices for remote work and you hear it's exhausting and it's different and you'll go through ups and downs in your productivity. And we need to think generously with ourselves too. We need to understand that, of course, we should be grateful. And then there are those days you're tired and frustrated and scared and you don't feel very grateful at all.
Mm-hmm.
You feel all those other emotions, or you think, why us? Why now? Why me?
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, usually I sleep and then, get up and go after it again and realize we got this. It's okay.
Yep.
To your point, we're learning stuff about
We're
ourselves and
learning.
each other, and our organization will be better for.
Well, now I'm secretly jealous that your superpower is to sleep when you're stressed. I tend to eat chocolate and sometimes yell at someone and then go for a jog. I don't think any of us are as healthy as sleeping.
Don't worry. I left out several other things that I do,
Okay.
like eat too much. My wife is like, "Oh my God, you're like a grazer. You just go in and out of the pantry all day when you're at home." I'm
Me
like,
too.
well, that's the way I get out of our home office in the basement and go get a little sunlight. Might as
That's
well go
right.
get a snack at the same time, right?
That's right. I have to justify the running and the long walks by continuing to feed myself calories.
Exactly. Well, and I've joked, I've saved so much gas money working from home, but I think I've turned it right back into coffee money. Golly, I think Jana, my CFO, is going to cut me off of the coffee machine when we get back because I realize how much I drink. I'm going to have to contribute to a kitty when I get back to the office.
That's funny. I want you to also take a couple minutes to give me the high points of high touch. So give me the 3-minute elevator speech about your organization for people who have not experienced the beauty of what you do.
Sure. So High Touch is actually a 36-year-old tech company, an overnight success, 36 years in the making. Our founding story, High Touch started with a professor and his 2 best grad students who did coding, were software developers back in the 80s. And one of their first products, they took on a project for a rent-to-own business that wanted to computerize some of their inventory and day-to-day operations management. That rent-to-own transaction is really difficult. There's a lot to keep track of. And so they created code that would do that. And it was very successful and it grew. And our whole genesis was really in custom software development, and particularly a point of sale system for the rent-to-own industry. But over the years we evolved. That was a great start. But my predecessor realized, that was a very concentrated business model. And so he very intentionally grew and diversified High Touch beyond just software development and point of sale systems into what's often referred to as managed services. So we do everything from designing network infrastructure for businesses to managing and supporting that, to security. So all things kind of IT, hardware, network related. We've also branched into business telephony, unified communications, ERP solutions. We've also launched a joint venture with Thrive Restaurant Group here in Wichita, great partners, to create a point of sale, very disruptive, cool, cloud-based point of sale system for the restaurant industry called Nigel that we're super excited about. And I think on the backside of this crisis, there'll be a lot of opportunities for us to help businesses, the restaurant
Mm-hmm.
industry, continue to transform their business model. So we're kind of all things technology, software, and communications for small, medium-sized organizations. In many cases, we're the additional capacity and capabilities that augment what smaller organizations have in terms of their internal IT, whether that's custom software code or network infrastructure or communications.
That's a wonderful summary. And I think, for the small and medium-sized business who have been, somewhat tripping through this process, it's a great opportunity at some point to open a conversation with, this is how we've been doing it. How can we do this better? And that's kind of the question you love getting, because you guys love providing solutions, and not just solutions that everybody else is doing, which is what a lot of companies have had to just step into. And this is what I heard is working. This is what, my neighbors started using, and this is, how we've been solving it. But there has to be a better way for our business model to have a better solution that's more efficient, more practical, or more affordable even. So those are the kind of questions that I know you are great at solving.
Well, and part of what makes high touch somewhat unique, as I got into this industry and met a lot of industry peers and have joined different CEO type peer groups within the industry, one thing I've learned about high touch I'm very grateful for. We're a very diversified business in terms of what we offer. So from a small, medium-sized organization, being able to do everything from writing custom code, middleware to make your existing systems talk, or to take a legacy software platform and modernize it, all the way through to designing your network, your security, your telephone solution. What we often say is, our goal is to be your business partner, to bring technology across that whole spectrum to the table, to be your business partner, not just another IT vendor, because many small organizations have to go get different vendors for very specific solutions. Or where do I get my telephone from? Where am I going to buy my network hardware? Where am I going to buy my antivirus? And they have to cobble together kind of a network of providers to try to cover those gaps. And our goal is to be that partner that can help you identify your overarching technology needs. And everything blurs. I think most small, medium-sized owners, they just think about their technology. They don't differentiate between what's software and hardware. And they just want stuff to work. They want to figure out how to transform their business model into the new digital age successfully. And they want a partner to help walk them through that over time.
And the other thing I'm going to brag about you as an organization, and your predecessor did this very well, and you're walking it out in your way and in a similar way. But the way I know you is that High Touch is incredibly involved in the community. They're incredibly involved in communities where you reside, but especially here in Wichita, which is its, founding gate. And the way that you have your hands in things in the community, and people maybe who have not heard of High Touch now that will see your name in places. I love the application of caring about Wichita that you do. And it really reflects those core values that you were talking about. It's taking care of the house where we live.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. My immediate predecessor, Wayne, but Lyle before him, and our founders before him that came out of Wichita State. Wichita has always been near and dear to High Touch's heart. And we have offices in 6 different locations now. We're in Kansas City, Denver, Dallas, San Antonio, Corpus Christi. But Wichita's our home, and where most of our employees are, probably 120 of our 175. And I think most of us in Wichita are fully on the Wichita bandwagon and have been for a long period of time. I'm one of those. I'm a Wichita kid. I grew up here. I'm a boomerang. I left and went a lot of other places. Thought I would never come back when I left. But kind of like some of our earlier conversation, I had to experience other things, which I loved, But I had to experience those to truly appreciate, become grateful for what I had. And so when I returned to Wichita, I've been a pretty big believer in that Wichita is a great place to live, work, play. And frankly, in my life, I've never seen Wichita have more momentum than we've
Me
than we've
neither.
had. You know, I who knows? I mean, I do think the data is shocking on how particularly hard hit we've been through both COVID, but also the 737 MAX that immediately preceded it. But we'll emerge from this stronger. I believe that. The plans will change and morph, but Wichita is a place I'm proud to call home. And I think we've got a lot of things going for us, and we're happy to do our part and helping build that future.
I love hearing that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Derrick Nielsen from High Touch Technologies. This is Janice Perkins from Capacity. Thank you.